Hi, I'm Ben,
And I'm Lucas.
and we are two aspiring filmmakers making unnecessary commentary on famous movies.
Each week, we will randomly select a film to analyze, discuss, and review.
We will select the film at the end of each podcast, so you will have ample time to watch the movie before the next episode.
We are slightly qualified film students. Hello.
Hello, welcome back.
Welcome back to another episode of Slightly Qualified Film Students. Coming in today with the 2012 film, The Perks of Being a Wallflower.
Yeah, this is based off of a novel of the same name from the 90s that I know Lucas has read. Before or after the movie?
After the movie, yeah.
Which one's better? Which one can you officially say is better?
I don't know. I don't really tend to compare books and movies to each other. I mean, on an enjoyment level, I'm always going to go with the movie 9 times out of 10.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
I don't know. I think the book is well-written novel on its own part, and I mean, it's interesting here because the same writer of the novel is also the director of this film and wrote the screenplay. So, he has full creative control of everything of The Perks of Being a Wallflower. So, it's not like it's been completely changed or altered. I mean, this movie is definitely toned down quite a bit for that PG-13 rating, because the book is quite graphic at some points.
Right.
But I don't know. I this is definitely a comfort film for me. I know it's sad, but it also has like a feel good kind of ending, and yeah, I don't know. It's a bit of a comfort film for me.
Yeah, going into it for the first time, I don't know. I was looking forward to it, and it definitely didn't disappoint. It's a very nice coming of age film. Better than a majority of high school, like, romance / dramas / coming of age, that kind of genre. I'd put it, it's top tier. The soundtrack is killer. There's some beautiful shots in here too. I mean, it's definitely a very well put together story, and overall, I was pretty impressed. I wasn't really sure what to expect, but definitely impressed me. I got the plot summary here. I'll just read it real quick.
Nice.
It's a long one. Charlie, a 15-year-old introvert, enters high school and is nervous about his new life. When he befriends his seniors, he learns to cope with his friend's suicide and his tumultuous past. Yeah, so I think that this film is quite a bit darker than I was expecting it to be when I went in. I thought it was going to be about freshman. He's quote unquote loser. He doesn't have any friends, and he finds a way to fit in. But nah, this movie it's very dark. He's got a messed up past, and he has PTSD. He's repressed memories of his aunt molesting him as a child,
Spoiler
and you constantly see this in. Yeah, spoiler alert. And you're seeing this through repressed memories and flashbacks he's having every time he sees romantic behavior. And it's an interesting, character being played out here, because you slowly learn all these things that have been building on him to make him this awkward, socially awkward person. It's revealed to you at the party scene when he is high that his friend committed suicide in a very casual way, because he's not functioning at a normal capacity. So all these things get revealed, and then by the end you're just like, damn, this is sad. This is very, very sad. It's a very dark ending, and I really wasn't expecting it. But, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it is a darker film, and definitely one of the darker high school films out there. But at the heart of it, it is just about being in high school and going through that kind of livelihood. And for him, I think he's meant to be in grade 9 in the film, so he's just
Yeah.
starting high school. He's very new to everything, and I thought it was interesting watching this film now. I don't think I'd seen it in 3-4 years. um so watching it at the time when I was younger than Charlie, and now watching it older than him, it's
Right.
I come at it with a very different perspective, and realizing just how young he is in this film, and how messed up it is, everything that happens to him. And upon rewatching this film, knowing what's going to happen, knowing his backstory, it's a lot harder to watch, honestly, because you're catching on to all of these things, and he's such this naive, innocent child that he's like this little puppy dog you want to protect. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, when you're watching it
Yeah.
again, already aware of everything that's going in his head constantly, I found it a lot harder to watch this time.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that that's kind of the attitude the seniors almost have to him. They kind of take him in. They feel for him because they're kind of a bit of, like a band of, I think they call themselves like the band of misfit toys, a little bit of outcasts. Obviously, Ezra is gay, and he is, he's bullied for that. And, I think that they kind of feel for him and they take him in. And it's a very, like, fun relationship that they all have with each other. Like, there's some really funny moments in this film, even though it is quite dark. Like, you still have elements of that, yeah, goofy, like almost rom-com high school feel, uh, which definitely make it a very entertaining watch because you're contrasting these super dark scenes with, feel good music, feel good aesthetics, and just like carefree Rocky Horror Picture Show uh, dance sequences, and it's a really interesting ride. Kind of, it's like high school. It's all over the place, and I think they captured it really well. So, props to them. I think it'd be more accurate if we went to school in the States.
Yeah,
Um,
it feels. I mean, it's not really relatable coming from, like, we don't
yeah,
have that crazy football, that every American high school has.
or like even a lunch room where everyone, like a cafeteria where everybody has to get their food and then sit at tables. Like,
I mean, I have that,
uh,
but yeah.
no, you just leave, go get lunch at like McDonald's or something.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, and also the whole like periods and semesters. It's just not a thing here.
Yeah,
But I
and
figure you see it so much, it's probably accurate.
yeah, and I'll talk about this bit more story and originality, but I don't know if the bullying that happens in this film is that realistic, not going to an American school. Like, I mean, I think some of it makes sense, but a lot of it just felt like,
Wow.
really? Is this actually
Like
happen to
a kid
people?
sits down in English class and he like likes reading books, and then the person next to him is like, idiot. Like, what?
It's just like, yeah, some of the bullying in this film felt so just mean. Like, honestly, unrealistically
Just
mean. Like, I mean, I'm sure this happens to people, but I don't know. I just
like, I've never sat
can't
down in the
relate to
English
it, I
class and
guess.
watched someone like raise their hand and been like, what a smartass.
Yeah.
Like, no, I don't know anyone who does that. Who's just like, it gets super like chippy at someone for liking reading,
Yeah.
or just like walks down the hall. Like, we're gonna be seniors next year. I don't think I'm gonna walk down the hall, spot a freshman, and like just rip his book cover
Yeah.
for no reason. Like,
It's true. It's true.
like or just like push someone.
Yeah. Like,
Like,
why? What was the point of that? Yeah.
uh,
Okay, well, let's head into standout scenes here. What is your standout scene, Ben?
I'm probably stealing Lucas's, but it has to be the LSD sequence at the party. This is like the second drug experience at a party for Charlie. And this scene is just, not only is it beautifully shot, but it also fully reveals what's her name? Aunt Helen? Right.
Yeah, Aunt Helen.
It fully reveals, like, her death. It doesn't get to the sexual abuse yet, I don't think, if I remember
No.
correctly. But it reveals it in such a beautiful way, because you're getting these flashbacks of him doing the snow angels, and then flashes back to that's the same spot where his aunt last talked to him before leaving and being hit by a car. And just the dreamlike visuals. They have that shot where she tells him to look up at the stars, and then I don't even know what it is, but it's like different sections of the stars lighting up. I don't know. It just looks sick. The music, the score here is absolutely beautiful. And overall, it's just a very well put together scene, and in my opinion, the most enjoyable one of the whole movie. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a sad scene in itself. Like, he's kind of depressed. Well, he's on LSD. He's depressed because he sees Emma Watson and her college boyfriend going upstairs, and he's seeing everyone kind of morph together, and he's out of his head, and he starts going through his, remembering Aunt Helen, remembering how she died. And I mean, watching this on second rewatch and knowing all the other stuff, it's very, very depressing. And there is a line that his aunt says in this scene in one of the flashbacks where she says it's our little secret, which obviously you don't really catch on to on first watch, but upon rewatch it's very obvious.
Yeah. I mean, I thought it was a little weird for sure.
Yeah.
Hearing it, I was like, that's kind of...
Yeah. Yeah.
Off-putting.
But in the moment you feel like, oh, it's just kind of cringy, weird writing, but you don't think that that's going to happen.
I definitely wasn't predicting the twist.
Yeah. Yeah, me neither. When I first watched it, it really shocked me. And yeah, I mean, that was my standout scene, but I got some other ones. I think a big one is, like, near the end when he has his mental breakdown. That's such a obvious kind of choice of a scene.
Yeah.
Where he says goodbye to his friends, they leave off to college, and he just starts going in this downward spiral of just depression and thinking it was his fault he killed Aunt Helen. He's alone again. He doesn't want to have to go through high school again all alone. And yeah, it's such a heartbreaking scene. Sad. Logan Lerman kills his performance in that scene.
Yeah, totally.
And I think the Percy Jackson franchise really did not use him to his full potential.
They did him dirty. Did they make all 5 of those?
Nah, they made 2. They made 2.
They made 2?
Yeah.
What was the third one? Something about Titans.
Yeah, I don't know. I remember liking the third book. Yeah.
The books were good.
I think that's a great scene. I also love the tunnel scene, both of them.
Yeah.
They're very memorable scenes. Like when you go back and think about this film.
Especially if you're a Bowie fan.
Yeah. It's very obvious. I think there's a lot of little scenes here and there that are quite just simply beautiful in very simple, calm ways that it's kind of like the whole concept and vibe of this entire film.
Yeah, for sure. Did we get any audience questions this week? I guess in the last 2 weeks we had to take a little week break to make up for me being away camping. So
yes.
So it's going to be awkward when we get to our 1-year anniversary. It's going to be our 51st film, I guess.
Yeah. Audience questions. Yes, we have a couple here. We got...
Nice.
What was your favorite line of dialogue in this film?
I think it's gotta be just like, I guess what would you call it, like the tagline, maybe something you'd put on the poster where he's just like, I feel infinite, or we are infinite, because that's a dope line.
It is a pretty dope line.
Like
I like how he says
a sick way to
Well, the first tunnel scene, he kind of just he's like high, and he's just like, I feel infinite, and it's just
Yeah.
kind of thrown away, and then that's the last line of the film. Also, he's like, we are infinite. That's pretty cool. I mean,
Yeah.
I
It's
really
just a
like.
cool line.
I think I love Paul Rudd's line to him, where he says, "We choose the love we think we deserve." Like that's just such a
Yeah.
killer line
It's
right
kind
there.
of facts.
Yeah.
It's kind of
And then he's like,
Paul
can
Rudd.
can
Paul
tell
Rudd,
them
randomly
they
the
deserve
homie
more?
teacher.
Can we tell them they deserve more? And he's like, we can try. Like that's just some nice dialogue back and forth there. Paul Rudd really, he comes in here and you think he's gonna play
It's
like
so
this kind of comedic
random.
role, and he just plays like that
It's
solid,
It's like
awesome
the only
English
teacher you see in the entire movie, except the shop teacher, and he's just a homie.
Yeah, he's just a homie.
Yeah. Like hugging his grade 8.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that was our audience question. So thank you for that.
Nice.
And let's take a quick break and we'll hop into the actual review. Okay, we're back.
All right, we are back.
Heading into story and originality out of 10.
I think, this story, it feels kind of cliche at some points. I'm gonna be honest.
Yeah, I don't think the story
I think
feels
that
cliche. I feel like there's moments in the script that feel cliche.
Right. Yeah, that's true. Because I was gonna say, yes, it kind of feels cliche at some points, but also the ending and just like how deep they get into these psychological problems that he's having is it's pretty unique for a movie of this caliber, like a high school drama. You don't really see a lot other than the other one starring Ezra Miller. We need to talk
It's
about
not really
Kevin,
a high school
if you can
drama.
even call it like a high school. Yeah, I was about to say it's
We
not.
see
a
the
high
high
school
school
drama,
for the
but-
last 10 minutes of the film.
Yeah, with the bow
Yeah.
and arrow. But I think that this movie goes in very deeply into Charlie's psyche in a way that not a lot of other high school movies do. So I really appreciated that, and because of that, I think that this story is very touching, and it's very very solid for how long this movie is, for just the subject matter in general. I feel like they tackled it really well, and it's an interesting story. I can't really call it the greatest high school movie ever, because that's got to be Waves if you can count it.
Is that really a high school movie? I mean, it's not
Yeah,
based in high
I don't
school. I
know.
think if we say a high school movie, it has to be based around high school. Waves is not really based
Yeah.
around high school.
I mean, it's
I
kind
think
of.
I think
don't
this
know.
is a
I don't know.
really it's a well-made coming of age film, and I think the story is really beautiful and interesting and original in its own way. I definitely do think when we talk about screenplay, there are definitely a lot of lines of dialogues or certain scenes that feel very cliche, but I think if we're just looking at the overall story, I think it's very solid and very beautiful.
Yeah, totally. I agree. What'd you
I
give
give it the 9 out of 10.
Yeah, I gave it an 8% out of 10. It's a high 8, but yeah, solid 8%. Not quite a 9 in my eyes. Let's move on to beginning, which is at a 5%. And I think that this beginning is not very good. I think that it kind of had me nervous for the rest of this film. Now, it starts off with narration, which isn't always a no-no. But in this case, it's just kind of straight up exposition to an imaginary. I guess he's supposed to be writing letters to the audience, right? Like where his pen pal or something getting these letters, and that's how the story is told.
Yeah.
Which is, it's cool and all, but it's just an excuse for some exposition. And
Mm-hmm.
the book is basically diary entries, if I'm not
Yeah, the
mistaken.
entire book is well. The entire
Uh,
book are letters because he's literally writing letters to a pen pal. That's literally the book. So that's why they did that at the start here, because that is the entire book.
yeah. Um, so yeah, I think that it's not my favorite way of giving exposition. I gotta be honest. I don't think it's that creative, and it's just kind of blatant narration as exposition. It's not the worst, but it's just kind of a very predictable opening. He's a very cliche high school student. You know, he's like trying to eat lunch, but he has to sit alone in the lunchroom. Uh, he's getting bullied by the seniors in the hallways. It's just not a very interesting opening, in my opinion. And it definitely had me nervous for how the rest of the movie is going to play out. But then I was pleasantly surprised with the rest. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think definitely it's a lot of exposition and yeah, but I like how the dialogue was written in the sense that you get a pretty clear understanding of who Charlie is really quickly with how he talks, how he just his entire dialogue and that opening sequence I think is well enough written even though it is all exposition and you get a good glimpse of his character. I like the shop class scene with Ezra Miller. I mean, Ezra Miller is the clear highlight of this movie for me. Man brought it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Totally.
I mean, I think it's a pretty meh beginning. I don't think it's awful. I don't think it's great, but I do feel like it's pretty much on the same level as all those other average beginnings we've been seeing with a lot of, like, coming of age films. They tend to have this, like, just exposition kind of beginnings. Which is fine. It sets you up for the rest of the movie, but doesn't get you points for beginning.
Yeah. I gave it a 2%. I thought it was below average, especially compared to some other films we've been reviewing. Although, we haven't really dabbled that much in this kind of genre. Uh, but yeah, I mean, when you're just comparing it to some of these films we've done that have, like, stellar openings that are super memorable and hit you with action right away, or even the slower ones that are just very beautiful. This film just doesn't really do it for me.
Yeah,
So I gave it
I gave it
the
the
2%.
3. It's a low 3 for me, but I don't know. I think yeah, it's a 3. It's pretty average for me. Okay, moving into
Mhm.
ending out of 5 also.
You know what? I was watching this ending and I was like, man, they're gonna end it with goddamn narration. I was expecting it, but then it's just something about this ending, man. It's really awesome. Uh, Emma Watson figures out who David Bowie is, um, and they start listening to Heroes and driving down the tunnel. It's just beautiful. It really is. And I love that they cut away from the narration. Ezra Miller and Emma Watson are just screaming, music's blasting. It's just awesome, man. I just really love this ending. I'm not giving it quite full marks because of the long narration right before it ends, but it's damn near close because this is a baller way to end a movie, and I love it.
Yeah, it's a very memorable ending, and yeah, it is narration, but I gotta say, it's some damn good narration. There's some really beautiful dialogue that is being said in that narration.
Hell
Um,
yeah.
it's not just recapping the film like most end narrations do. It's him, writing his final letter or writing a letter about being in that tunnel in that moment. It's not about him being like, "Oh, I've grown, I've seen the world." Like it's not that. It's not telling us anything. It's leaving it still pretty ambiguous cuz he's having fun in that moment, but he's still going to have to go back to high school without them. And
Yeah.
basically his life is just going to go on, but in that moment, which is what he says in the film, he says in this moment we are infinite. And I think that is, if you're going to use narration, you should use it in that way to end your film because it's gives you goosebumps. And Heroes kicking in right in the when
Yeah.
the drum hits and them screaming out their window, and it transitions from the orange tunnel light into the blue night sky. It's a very beautiful ending.
That's awesome. It
Yeah,
truly is
I gave
awesome.
it 4 out of 5.
Yeah, I gave it the 4% too. I wish I could have given it a 5, but it's just it's just not quite there. Not quite, but it's
Not
close.
quite. Yeah.
Uh yeah, screenplay and dialogue time at a 8%. Now, I don't know. I'm kind of conflicted cuz there are some awesome lines in this movie. Like there are some absolute killer lines. But there's also a lot of narration and very cliche stereotypical characters that are just so flat and so boring. Uh, like this film just went full stereotypical. You got like the goth character who's a punk and a Buddhist, lol. Uh, and then you have the sports jocks who are just like douches who like sports. Um, and then you got the outcasts, and it's cliche. It's very like Breakfast Clubby almost, with like everybody being one of the stereotypes, kind of. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't know. The screenplay like managed to charm me a lot, actually. Even with its clichéness and its narration, it's very charming. The the dialogue, even these stereotypical characters, like they just manage to warm your heart a bit and also shatter it. Um, but warm your heart. And I think that this has some very well written scenes, some very stereotypical cliche scenes, but it kind of balances out. So I don't really hate it too much at all. Like I think
Yeah.
uh, it's solid. It's
I
solid.
think
It
there's
ends up being
some
solid.
really fantastic dialogue in this film. I think there's some pretty cliche scenes, but I also think there's some really groundbreaking scenes for a high school coming of age film. Um, yeah, I do think a lot of the characters do have their pretty cliche kind of stuff, but you got like the jock, but who's also kind of closeted gay, and there's all of that going on. This screenplay does pull twists and turns throughout the film, and it also just delivers some really human moments. I mean, yeah, we were talking about how a lot of the high school stuff wasn't really that real, but I felt like there were a lot of moments just within their friend group or just them hanging out that felt very real. Um, just
Yeah.
them like eating dinner together, or just chilling, doing whatever. There's some like scenes that just felt very like you're just watching a group of friends hanging out, and you know there's some really beautiful pieces of dialogue. I mean, my biggest issue with the screenplay is one specific scene, which genuinely makes me cringe, and that is the scene where uh, Ezra Miller gets beat up by all the jocks. Um, I mean, like the start of the scene is pretty cool because he goes and stands up for himself, and then he punches his boyfriend in the
Yeah.
face, and like that stuff's cool. I like that. He starts getting beat up.
Mm-hmm.
What I don't like is little grade 9 Charlie single handedly
Blacks
beats
out.
up 5 like full football jocks, like bloodied on the ground, no weapon in sight, with his own 2 fists. And
And then
they're
he can't even remember like what happened. He's like, "Oh, what did I
because
do?"
he has his blackouts, which whatever, he has these blackouts, and that makes sense. But that's their excuse. Like they're like, yes, this boy just all of a sudden has superpowers, and it's a blackout. And even though they do show when he's having his breakdown at the end, like him genuinely, like beating up some of these guys, like going absolutely crazy, that still doesn't excuse this because there was like 5 of them. One of them could easily have just knocked him in the back of the head, and he would have been out. I think this would have worked if there was only like 1 or 2, because then I could believe it if he went fully crazy. But when there was just like a full group of them, it's just not believable at all. That's my biggest issue with the screenplay. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, it's just that scene. But, I do think there's some great scenes in here that make up for it, and some really beautiful dialogue. I gave it a 6 out of 8.
Yeah, I gave it the 6% too, which is kind of crazy to me because I felt like it was too cliche to be given the 6, but also it's really beautifully written, so it balanced out. Got the 6%. Now let's move on to soundtrack, which is at a 7%. Um, I love the soundtrack. I think it's awesome. I love David Bowie, obviously, and I love that they chose that to be like the legendary song of awe and myth. Um, and also they name dropped Nick Drake, and I was really hoping they licensed some Nick Drake to put in here, and they didn't, which kind of disappointed me. But at least they name dropped him, so shout out Emma Watson, or I guess shout out Stephen Chbosky. Is that how you say his name?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, I mean, the soundtrack is very memorable in this film. It's definitely one of the biggest portions of this film. Uh, Perks of Being a Wallflower had a budget of, I think, 22 million, and I can genuinely say that a solid amount of that probably went to the soundtrack.
Sorry, what was
because
the budget?
they licensed a lot of music for this film and a lot of really well-known songs. You got the Smiths, David Bowie, Come On Eileen. Like, there's a lot of really big kind of 90s,
And they
80s hits.
used them, and it's not like just 10 seconds of it.
Yeah.
They used like the whole thing. So
Yeah. So obviously this is a fantastic soundtrack. It carries a lot of the movie, and not just the song choices. There are some really beautiful score
elements.
pieces that are used in this movie, especially like that LSD scene, the mental breakdown scene. There are just some really deathly depressing but beautiful scores that are used within the film. Yeah, I mean, this was an easy 7 out of 7 for me for the soundtrack.
yeah, 7 out of 7 for me. If they used Nick Drake, would have been an 8. But I bet it's really hard to license his music. Yeah, let's move on to production design, costumes, and set. I overall thought that the production design in this movie was very solid. There's no big sets, but I thought that the costumes were great. I love that they really got into the true Rocky Horror Picture Show culture.
Yeah,
Which
those
also you have to
costumes
think
were
about.
great.
They had to license the ability to use scenes
Oh,
from
that's
that movie.
true. And the movie is playing
And
in the
the
background,
songs.
obviously.
That's
and
what
the
I'm. Yeah,
songs.
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That would have been expensive.
Because this movie doesn't look like a big budget film, but it had, I think it was like 20 million, which isn't a huge
13.
budget,
It's
but
13.
it's still...
13 million.
Really? I thought I read it
Yeah.
had a much bigger budget.
No,
Well-
I just looked up 13 million.
Oh, yeah. Well, there
I
you
mean,
go.
It's
But
a
I can
pretty
still
in-
say
it's a
that
pretty indie
probably
film.
a lot of that was going to the soundtrack. Oh, no, it made 30 million in the box office. But, yeah, a lot of it was going to the soundtrack, and... the production design isn't crazy by any means, but I do love the detail within it. I was noticing there was a scene, like the scene at the end in Emma Watson's room. What's her character's name? Sam's bedroom with Charlie. Like, there's just... It could have been such a just normal scene with a couple lamps on the bedposts or whatever, but they like got little like pixie lights and wrapped them around her bed frame so you could get like beautiful bokeh in the background of the shots. And then they lined her window with like some lights and posted like different colored pictures around it, so you get that like contrast of that color and the bokeh off the lights, which is often you don't see in indoor scenes. And I just loved those choices because it makes these scenes that are mostly just medium close-ups stand out and feel a lot more beautiful, just by that little extra detail in the production design. Yeah, I mean, I really love the costumes in this film.
Yeah, totally. Leather jackets. I
They
mean,
felt
why does everybody
pretty
get a leather jacket?
realistic.
Even a marching band. That's not even a sport.
Yeah.
Some nice dialogue for you. Yeah, I think that $13 million budget, they were able to create some pretty awesome sets. I mean, you have all these posters in Emma Watson's room and stuff. It's
Hmm.
just, it's
And
very
even like
nice.
little things like the shop class, or like having to
Yeah,
make all of those pink woodworking
tools.
tools, like just things like that that you can tell obviously took some effort, and they really had to go out on that stuff, spend money, and make that wall of them.
Hmm.
It's there's just little things like that, um, that make the production design stand out for this film. Obviously, it's not incredible by any means, but for the budget it had and the limitations it has just being a high school film, I think they really just did well with costumes and production design. That I gave it a 5 out of 6.
Yeah, I gave it the 5% out of 6 as well. Um, Very, very solid. Very, very, very solid. Uh, yeah, so let's move into location selection, which I also think quite solid. Uh, I like that they actually made a fake high school football game and really captured that whole culture because I know it is very big in the States. Um, which, you know, they put on the real deal Friday Night Lights for that. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
just simple locations like the snowy. Is it Philadelphia or Pittsburgh? I think it's Pittsburgh because they like the
Yeah.
Penguins.
Yeah.
Uh, so it's just the snowy, uh, you know, suburbs of Pittsburgh. Very nice. Obviously the tunnel and the bridge where they uh, stand up in is an
Yeah, the
awesome
tunnel is a
location.
beautiful location.
And,
Um,
overall, there's not many locations, I guess, throughout the film. But, even simple things like outside the theater with the nice neon lights, it's just nice. It's very nice touches.
yeah, I
And,
love the bleachers, like when they go up when he gets
mm-hmm,
his C minus in shop, and it's just this like standalone bleacher looking out into the city line skyline. Uh, it's like obviously not your usual high school bleachers. They really sought out that, and like the LSD scene again, like that snowy pile in those trees, forests, like it's just beautiful. Him doing that snow angel there.
yeah.
That street, that little windy street where he's having that flashback on his aunt, going to get his present. Just little things like that. I think there's some really great locations in this film that are
Yeah.
very accurate to where this film takes place, and the style of this film. Obviously, they're not going to have crazy silence locations, um,
Yeah.
but I think
But,
they did, care about their shots. They weren't just getting lazy. I also gave it 5 out of 6.
yeah, I gave it the 5% as well. Overall, very, very solid in both categories.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so yeah, we'll take a quick break and then we'll come back for the second half of the review, our final scores, and next week's film.
Okay, we are
Okay,
back.
back hopping into cinematography, which I thought was pretty good. Um, some nice bokeh here and there, nice soft depth of field. It's not quite as modern ultra bokeh as I would have liked. Um, and I feel like it's on the basic side. There's not a lot of crazy tracking shots or anything. Uh, I think overall it's shot very nicely. Not too crazy, but also there's no real bad shots here. Framing, once again, very solid. Uh, they don't really push it too much. They're not making it too over the top beautiful, which I feel like they could have really done and boosted this film up in my eyes. Uh, but there's nothing necessarily wrong, compositionally with the shots or anything. It's not quite on that same beautiful level as some other films of this era are.
Yeah, I feel
so
like this
a little
film
disappointing.
doesn't need to be beautiful, though. It's not really supposed to be a beautiful film. It's kind of
Yeah.
gritty. And it has its moments of beauty, like the tunnel scene, where it just is overwhelmingly beautiful, and that's kind of reflecting the state in which the characters are. Like, the tunnel scene is beautifully shot, tracking that car, and the lights, like, hitting the camera. And the first tunnel scene, that transition between coming out of the tunnel and her standing there into the night sky with the city skyline all blurred out in the background, it's really beautiful. I think there's some great scenes, like when Charlie and Ezra Miller are chilling on that bench up on like the mountaintop. There's just little things like that. I don't think the cinematography is anything extensive, but it's definitely like kind of just nice, and I think it fits the tone of this film really well.
Yeah. I give it an 8%
Yeah,
total.
me too.
Not quite on the 9 level.
I love the random Dutch angle when he's having his mental breakdown. It's just so... It works. It just works really well.
I hate Dutch angles.
Oh,
but
I hate Dutch angles too. I hate
like
Dutch
that
angles
one.
so much, but just having that 1-2 second Dutch angle was kind of funny, and I liked it. It worked for that scene. Yeah, I give it 8 out of 10 also. Okay, we're moving into editing here out of 8, and I actually think this film is edited really well, especially if you think about all the flashback sequences, because where they're placed, when they happen, very well done. On top of that, there's some scenes that are really, really fast paced in this film, where the editing has to kind of just go crazy, like the dance scene. But I think the main thing that stands out to me with the editing in this film is just the overall consistency of making it so that we're watching these characters kind of go through this chaotic life and this depressing life, and the editing kind of reflects that. I mean, when you're watching like the LSD scene, for example, it's edited in this very quick paced fashion, but then it just slows completely down, and there's like zero cuts, and you're just watching him sit there alone for a solid like 20 seconds. Whereas if you contrast that to like when they're just they're dancing Come On Eileen, it's just crazy. Everything is happening, stuff is spinning around, it's constantly cutting, and I like how this film incorporates editing as if it's a character. But definitely the biggest thing for editing for me is that final sequence. I mean, or not the final sequence, but his breakdown sequence. That scene is edited to perfection.
It's almost reminiscent of like Eternal Sunshine or even Brazil in a way, where the character's mental state is obviously not chillin'. And so the editing kind of reflects that, and it just gets crazy. And it's very hard almost to follow the time and the structure of what's going on, which obviously totally fits the scene. And I just love how they harshly like end his breakdown intercutting montage with him actually in the, you know, the policeman kicks down the door, and then it just hard cuts to him in the hospital.
Yeah.
So I think that sequence is edited very, very well.
And also just how they reveal the twist. They reveal what Aunt Helen did. It's not like they don't just like blatantly tell you. It's through the editing that they kind of show you things. Like they show how the way that Emma Watson is touching his thigh, and then it shows the aunt doing the same thing to him as a child. It's little things like that.
Yeah.
And when he
and
turns
like,
over her hand, and you see the the scars on her wrist, and then you see him looking at a knife on the kitchen table. Like, there's just little things like that that's all done in the editing room that I felt were really strong choices of where they placed all these shots. And there's a lot of montages also in this film. There's a lot of montages to show passage of time, which obviously most people know montages all editing, because they're just editing to music. And I think this film is a tiny step above the average editing in films we've been watching, so I gave it that 7 out of 8.
Yeah, I don't think it's quite on the 7% level for me. I gave it a 6%, but it's definitely slightly better than the average, especially that final sequence. You know, in the last 20 minutes, I think it really picks up. Yeah, let's move on to acting at a 10%. And I think that this film has a very, very strong group cast. Emma Watson is great. Logan Lerman does his thing, especially at the very end. He's given a great performance. But I mean, Ezra Miller steals the show. He really does.
Yeah.
His character's ups and downs are so believable. Ezra Miller is an incredible actor.
Yeah.
If you haven't seen We Need to Talk About Kevin, you should watch that. Also, great performance in that movie too. I haven't really watched too much DC recently, but I assume he's good as the Flash as well.
Yeah, I mean, Ezra Miller, he hasn't done a crazy amount of work, but he kills it in this film. Really, really does well. Like, that scene where he's telling Charlie what happened to him and Brad when Brad's father found them together, and that entire monologue is so just heart-wrenching, and he gives just throughout the entire film, showing his like really super flamboyant side in Rocky Horror Picture Show, showing his like energetic happiness and sarcastic funny comments in shop class, and also just showing his pure utter sadness and loneliness. I think
especially in that quick montage where they're sitting together, they have those nights where it's just Charlie and him talking. He gets dark, man.
Logan Lerman, I think, also kills it in this film. The ending is incredible, obviously, when he's sitting there and he's telling himself not to cry, and his eyes, he's just bawling, but he's trying to keep his composure. It's really incredible shot. But also, throughout the entire film, his composure, his posture, the way he delivers his dialogue in a very like academic way, he sounds very innocent in how he talks, and that's an acting choice, and I think it really is perfect for the character of Charlie. I mean, if you read the book, the character of Charlie is so naive and innocent, and I think he really shows that in this film. I think Emma Watson does a pretty good job. She has her moments, like when she's like talks about how she was molested as a kid from her dad's boss, when she realizes that Charlie's friend shot himself. Like she has moments. My one complaint is I think her accent is awful. Really not a good American accent. But I think she has solid moments. I think all the supporting characters are fine. I think there's some one-liner actors in the high school that are dreadful, but
that girl in English class just sucks, man.
But
she sucks.
Luckily, they have like one or two lines in the entire film. Paul Rudd,
Paul Rudd is good. Paul Rudd's a goat.
Awesome. I mean, even though there are some side characters, I overlook them because they're just minimal. And, there's some really dramatic stuff that happens in this film, so Ezra Miller and Logan Lerman especially get to really show off their acting chops. I give it a 9 out of 10.
Yeah, I gave it a 9 out of 10 as well. Now, let us move in to entertainment value out of 10%. I thought that overall this was a fairly entertaining movie. It's funny at some points, but it's also very dark. Got that roller coaster of emotions that is kind of what the high school experience is like. And yeah, I really appreciated it. I don't think it was the most entertaining movie I've ever seen. Rewatchability, you know, I'll rewatch it again maybe. But I found it a bit harder to relate, I guess, than would be, I guess, its inability to make me relate, because obviously I don't go to school in the States, and this very dark situation is not one that I'm in. Kind of lowered the grade for me a tiny bit, but I mean overall, very solid, entertaining viewing. Would highly recommend it. It's pretty short too, and there's some hilarious sequences, some beautiful sequences, and the soundtrack's killer. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this is like a comfort film for me. This is only my third time watching it, but I don't know. I just kind of get really into it. I like when you have these coming of age films that aren't afraid to get to those dark places and discuss real life stuff that happens to a lot of people that is,
Yeah.
this film is definitely on the brink of not being PG-13. They're definitely pushing it. Obviously, they wanted to keep it PG-13 because it is a teen movie, so I'm sure they knew a lot of their box office was going to come from that. But they are definitely pushing it, and I know for a fact that the director said they had to make a few edits before the MPAA was able to give them that PG-13 rating, because there is some swearing in this film, and, the content is extremely brutal, especially at the end.
Yeah.
But I really enjoy this film. Third watch, I was very entertained. I mean, I hadn't seen it in a while, but I do think it has rewatchability, because I found myself watching this film in a complete different light when you know what happens to Charlie. It's like you're watching a different movie, because you're catching all these other stuff and you're really reading into his character a lot more. So yeah, I gave it a 9 out of 10 for entertainment value.
Yeah, I gave it a 8% out of 10. I think that if this movie was rated R, if they just sent it, they just rated it R, and made some Requiem for a Dream level, graphic content, would have had my heart even more.
I mean, in my opinion, any movie about high school should be rated R, because high school is R-rated.
For sure.
Obviously, money and stuff, but,
Yeah, who cares?
Pretty much
Christopher Nolan.
Life is R-rated, so just, go for it. I think Christopher Nolan stopped making PG-13 movies.
For real. Please stop.
Yeah. Okay. Overall technical achievement out of 15.
I think that this is not quite a 14%. I gave it the 8% in cinematography, 6% in editing. Very, very solid, but it's just not quite on that same technical level as some of the 14s I've given.
Yeah, I don't think it's 14 at all. I mean, I give editing a 7, but cinematography an 8. Soundtrack's great, but yeah, I think it's a solid 13 out of 15 for overall technical achievement.
Yep.
Yeah.
13%.
So.
And with that being said, we'll take a quick break, and then we'll tally up our final percentages and spin that wheel, baby.
Spin that wheel. See what we're getting next week. Okay, we're back, and we are finishing up here.
Tallied up our final
scores. Yeah, Ben, what did you give The Perks of Being a Wallflower?
I gave it an 81% overall. Not my favorite film in the world, but very, very solid watch. Would recommend. Yeah, nice coming of age story.
Yeah, I gave it a 85%.
Nice.
Yeah,
nice.
I mean, it's in my top 100. I mean, I don't know. It just has a special place in my heart. I know on a objective level it's not the greatest film ever made, but I don't know. It's just one of those films that I just like. It's like About Time and Sing Street.
Yeah.
Um,
God damn it, bro. About Time is unexcusable.
I love About Time. I genuinely love that movie.
That movie is so painfully mediocre.
Bro, I love that movie.
Okay.
So that gives us
We
a
have
83.5 or no, 82.5?
83.
What's the average?
It's 83. 83. So Manchester is 21st.
Manchester is 21st
still.
with Perks in 22nd place.
Just above I'm Thinking Ending Things. Nah.
Yep. Just above I'm Thinking of Ending Things. Underneath Manchester by the Sea. Nice. Okay. Well, I got screen recording up. I got the wheel ready to go. So let's spin this thing. See what we've got for next week. Okay. And we are spinning in 3, 2, 1. Here we go. Doo-doo. Oh. Ooh. Oh, okay. This is a pretty nice film. We have landed on Lars and the Real Girl.
Okay, I've never seen this. I've heard good things, I think.
Lars and the Real Girl, yeah, I mean, this is a pretty, funny yet, heartbreaking film. I think a lot of people say this is Ryan Gosling's best performance. It's a very indie film, like, very chill, but it's definitely a really interesting character study.
Wow, this plot summary is super long. Okay. Here we go. Extremely shy Lars, played by Ryan Gosling, finds it impossible to make friends or socialize. His brother, Paul Schneider, and sister-in-law, Emily Mortimer, worry about him, so when he announces that he has a girlfriend he met on the internet, they are overjoyed. But Lars's new lady friend is a life-size plastic woman. On the advice of a doctor, Patricia Clarkson, his family and the rest of his community go along with his delusion.
Yeah, so he has a sex doll as his girlfriend. That's basically what the movie's about.
Nice. What a guy.
And yeah, it's
man.
It sounds hilarious, but when you actually watch it, it's not as funny as you might think that plot idea would be. Yeah, I watched this film, I don't know, maybe a year ago for the first time, so I'm kind of excited to rewatch it. I loved it the first time I watched it, I can say that. It hit me in the feels in all the right way. And it's just like a cool indie film, honestly, with some great actors.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, man, I'm excited. This week we're putting Short Term 12 on the list, on the wheel.
Ultimate indie film.
I haven't seen it, but it seems good. And then next week we're gonna put Fargo on the wheel, so that's it too. Yeah, that was our review of The Perks of Being a Wallflower. Make sure you check it out. Make sure you keep sending in your audience questions, suggestions. We get those done as well. You know, Spider-Man was a suggestion. Even Good Will Hunting was a suggestion. So. Keep them coming. Yeah. Thanks for listening. We'll see you all next week. Thank you for listening to Slightly Qualified Film Students. Make sure to tune in next week for a new film discussion and review.
Our theme song is Slightly Sexy by Thompson Springs.
Make sure to subscribe and leave us a like.
Send us feedback and comments as well as your thoughts on the film. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter at S_Q_F_S.
If you would like to send us a question or a comment for next week's episode, you can email us at sqfilmstudents@gmail.com.
Thanks for listening, and we'll see you all next week.
Bye.